The air hangs thick with the scent of Nile silt and blooming jasmine, but tonight it carries something sharper smoke from distant lamps flickering in temple alcoves. You stand in the shadowed colonnades of the Serapeum, heart pounding like a war drum. Whispers slither through the marble halls. The emperor has come, not as pilgrim, but as conqueror. Girls in white linen veils clutch sacred sistrums, their chants to Isis rising like mist off the water. 15,000 voices, pure as the dawn, sworn to the goddess's eternal vigil. But the soldiers' boots echo closer now, iron-shod and relentless. A command slices the night harsh Latin barked over trembling Greek pleas. The veils tear. The chants fracture into screams. This is no offering to the divine. This is the machine awakening, gears grinding flesh into submission. And as the first girl is dragged from her pedestal, you realize the emperor's rage doesn't end with blood. It reshapes souls into weapons of his will. But why these virgins? And how does one man's shadow swallow a city's light? Hold on. The unraveling has just begun. What you're about to hear involves sexual violence against women dedicated to sacred rites, woven into a broader tapestry of massacre and plunder. These events are drawn from ancient chronicles and fragments of papyri, but they remain deeply disturbing. If this pulls you too close to the edge, step away, I'll understand completely. For those who stay, we honor the truth not by lingering on the wounds, but by exposing the imperial gears that turn devotion into degradation. Let's walk this shadowed path together, eyes wide, but hearts guarded. Imagine a vast machine, oiled by ambition and rusted with paranoia, churning across an empire that spans from misty British shores to sun-baked Syrian sands. This wasn't the fever dream of a lone madman. This was Rome at its zenith, and its fracture point the Severan dynasty, where power passed not through wisdom, but through the blade. In the year we now mark as 215, that machine rolled into Alexandria, the jewel of the Nile, a city where Greek minds debated stars and Egyptian gods whispered secrets to the faithful. Caracalla, the emperor whose name evoked both a hooded cloak and a hooded fury, didn't arrive as guest. He came as judge, jury, and executioner. This wasn't conquest born of glory. This was erasure forged in retribution, a calculated strike against a city's wit, its women, its very breath. Historians debate the spark, a satire mocking his brother's blood on his hands, or whispers of unrest in overcrowded streets. But the reality? A system designed to crush dissent before it bloomed, turning sacred spaces into stages of terror. Alexandria, with its 500,000 souls, wasn't just a port or a library. It was a mirror reflecting Rome's contradictions, Hellenic fire in African soil, where virgins of Isis embodied purity amid the empire's sprawl. Why does this echo now? Because power's machine never rusts entirely. It hums in boardrooms and borders, reminding us that one insult, one perceived slight, can unspool lives into oblivion. Caracalla's shadow fell not randomly, but precisely on the young, the elite, the untouchable. And in that fall, a goddess's handmaidens became the empire's hidden arsenal. But to see the gears turn, we must trace them back to the forge. The Roman Empire in those years stretched like a colossus, its veins pulsing with grain from Egypt's delta, spices from eastern caravans, and legions forged in the fires of endless frontier wars. From the Rhine's chill fogs to the Euphrates' dusty winds, it claimed near 3 million square miles, a mosaic of tongues and gods under one purple banner. Septimius Severus, Caracalla's father, a stern North African lawyer turned soldier emperor, had clawed the throne from chaos in 193, ending the year of the 5 emperors with a pragmatism that bordered on brutality. He ruled from 193 to 211, his reign a blueprint for survival, enrich the troops, bleed the provinces, and bind family to fate. Rome's coffers swelled with conquests in Mesopotamia, but the empire groaned under taxes that turned free men into serfs. The military, now the true Senate, swelled to 500,000 souls, their loyalty bought with donatives that drained the state's marrow. Yet beneath the parades and aqueducts, tensions simmered like Nile mud in summer heat. The East, rich but restless, chafed at Roman overseers, prefects, who tallied grain quotas while ignoring local rights. Alexandria stood at the heart of it all, a throbbing artery where Greek scholars parsed Aristotle under the shadow of the Pharos lighthouse. its beam a beacon for ships laden with papyrus and incense. Founded by Alexander 3 centuries prior, the city was a cauldron, Greeks in colonnaded villas, Egyptians in mud brick alleys, Jews in synagogues that echoed with Torah chants. Overcrowded markets buzzed with philosophers hawking truths and merchants haggling over ivory. But whispers of revolt lingered. Severus himself had toured here in 199. Tightening garrisons after Jewish uprisings scarred the diaspora. He expelled undesirables, culled the elite lessons his son would etch in blood. Into this machine stepped Caracalla, born Lucius Septimius Bassianus in 188, in the rainy garrison town of Lugdunum, far from Rome's marble pomp. Not born to purple, but to purple's edge, his father, a provincial equestrian, his mother Julia Domna, a Syrian priestess's daughter whose intellect could disarm senators. As a boy, Lucius shadowed his father's campaigns, learning not letters but the clash of gladius on shield. By 7, renamed Marcus Aurelius Antoninus to cloak the family in Antonine legitimacy, he donned the Caracalla, a Gallic hood that hid a gaze already sharpening like a dagger. Those early years weren't cradled in silk. Severus dragged him to the Danube's mud, where Germanic tribes tested Roman steel. Lucius, barely 10, watched executions. Rebels strung from trees, their bodies a warning etched in ravens' beaks. "Be harsh," his father growled, "for the world is harsh." Trauma took root there, not the wild grief of orphans, but the cold calculus of survival. A brother's rivalry? It wasn't play, it was prelude to purge. By his teens, Caracalla co-ruled, but the machine demanded more. In 198, at 12, he was Caesar, campaigning in Parthia, where Severus sacked Ctesiphon, dragging the king in chains. The boy emperor tasted victory's ash. Cities razed, women widowed, the empire's belly fattened on plunder. Yet home was fracture. His brother Geta, 4 years younger, mirrored him in miniature, both pampered, both plotting. Julia Domna, the steel-spined empress, juggled their tempers, her letters a web of diplomacy. But Severus's death in 211, on a British wall against Caledonian spears, unleashed the storm. The brothers returned to Rome, not heirs, but hounds circling the same bone. Caracalla, now 23, saw Geta not as kin but contaminant, a rival whose eastern sympathies threatened his western legions. The split proposed, Rome for one, Alexandria for the other. Julia forbade it, fearing civil war's echo. That winter, in her apartments, Caracalla struck. Geta, bleeding out in his mother's arms, gasped betrayal. 20,000 followed senators garroted, equestrians exiled, even cooks and midwives if their loyalty wavered. Caracalla's machine whirred, informers rewarded, purges systematic. He deified his father, damned his brother, and turned east in 212, issuing the Constitutio Antoniniana citizenship for all free souls, not mercy, but a tax net to fund his dreams. Dreams of Alexander, the god-king whose campaigns he aped, statues minted with Macedonian helms, legions drilled in phalanx. But whispers followed. Satirists in Antioch penned verses on fratricide. In Alexandria, mimes staged parodies of a cloaked tyrant, weeping over a sibling's ghost. The turning point came in Nicomedia's winter of 214 to 215. Couriers arrived with tales from the Nile. Alexandrians, ever sharp-tongued, had woven his crimes into street theater. Geta as slain innocent, Caracalla as Oedipal shadow his mother Jocasta in jest. Paranoia crystallized, not as rage, but policy. "The city mocks the purple," he murmured to his prefect, eyes on maps where Alexandria's grain silos fed Rome. Unrest brewed there too. Rural migrants, swelling slums, the Legio Tutriana stripped for Rhine duties, leaving a vacuum for riots. Caracalla saw not jests, but sedition, a Geta faction plotting in the Serapeum's shade. He departed in April, legions trailing like hounds. By December, the machine reached the Delta. Alexandria awaited, its virgins chanting to Isis, unaware their purity would fuel the emperor's forge. And in that convergence, the system's true horror ignited not mere slaughter, but the profane alchemy of sanctity into servitude. But that dawn, as sails dotted the horizon, no one yet smelled the turning tide. The winter sun slants low over the Canopic Way, gilding the obelisks and turning the harbor's waves to molten silver. Alexandria pulses with life. Spice merchants hawk saffron from wicker baskets. Philosophers in threadbare hymnations debate virtue's edge under the stoa, while Nile-fed palms rustle like conspirators in the breeze. The air tastes of salt and myrrh, undercut by the faint rot of fish markets where slaves haggle over baskets. It's December 215, and the city second only to Rome in splendor brims with 500,000 souls, a babble of Greek baritones and Egyptian lilts. Temples to Serapis and Isis crown the ridges, their pylons etched with gods who promise rebirth. But today, the streets throng with more than usual fervor. Word has spread. The emperor approaches, his fleet a forest of crimson sails. Caracalla enters not through triumphal gates, but quietly, as if testing the waters. His legions, 20,000 strong, veterans of Danube mud encamp beyond the walls, their tents a canvas scar on the dunes. The emperor, cloaked in that signature Caracalla hood, rides flanked by praetorians, his face a mask of imperial calm. He heads first to the Serapeum, that vast acropolis where Serapis' bull-horned fusion of Osiris and Zeus holds court. Incense curls from braziers, priests in leopard skins chant hymns that echo off granite walls. Caracalla sacrifices a white bull, its blood pooling warm on the altar, and kneels at Alexander's tomb, that golden sarcophagus whispered to hold the conqueror's remains. I am his echo, he tells his scribes, commissioning statues that blend his profile with the Macedon's fierce gaze. The city watches, curious, a delegation of elders approaching with olive branches and honeyed words. Among them is Thecla, a name that lingers like a half-forgotten prayer. 20 summers old, daughter of a grain merchant from the Delta's edge, she serves as High Virgin in Isis's inner sanctum. Her life began in the flood's bounty, childhood splashing in irrigation canals, learning the goddess's rites from her mother, a widow who wove linen for temple veils. Thecla was chosen at 12, her purity a vow etched in henna on her palms, sworn to celibacy, to channeling the Nile's life through dances that mimed creation's dawn. She tends the sacred grove now, where lotuses bloom in marble basins, their petals offerings to the veiled queen. Mornings, she anoints statues with milk and myrrh, her voice joining the chorus of 15,000 sisters, girls from every quarter, pledged to Isis's mystery, their bodies temples unto themselves. Thecla dreams of the goddess's favor, a vision, perhaps, to heal her mother's cough. Unaware, she lights lamps that night, their flames dancing like hopeful stars. The city adores them. These virgins, symbols of renewal, process through streets on festival days, their veils a river of white against the chaos. But the machine observes. Caracalla's spies, those hooded figures in the alleys, report back. Jests in the theaters, mimes aping a brother-slayer, crowds chanting Jocasta's son with sly grins. The emperor smiles at banquets, toasting elders with Falernian wine, but his eyes harden. He invites the youth, promising recruits for his Parthian host to parade unarmed in the Bruttian quarter, emulating Alexander's phalanx. Thousands gather, olive-crowned and eager, Thecla's brother among them, a lanky boy of 18 with dreams of glory. Thecla waves from a balcony, her veil catching the breeze. The confrontation builds like a gathering storm. Caracalla walks the ranks, hand on shoulders, praising forms honed by palustra oils. Rome needs your fire, he says, voice honey over steel. But as the sun peaks, the trap springs. Centurions close ranks, swords whispering from sheaths. The deputation of elders, those same olive-bearers, finds the gates barred, praetorians herding them into courtyards. Thecla hears the first cries from the women's quarter, where soldiers breach the Serapeum's outer walls. For the empire's honor, the prefect intones, but his eyes betray the lie. The virgins huddle in the naos, sistrums clutched like shields, Thecla's breath shallow as armored fists pound the cedar doors. She whispers to Isis, "Protect us, mother of mysteries." The demand comes muffled. Surrender your vows, serve the legion's needs, or face the blade. Refusal ripples through the chamber, a chorus of defiance born of divine oath. Thecla steps forward, veil fallen, eyes like polished onyx. We are the goddesses, not man's. The door splinters. What follows is shadow, not spectacle, a cut from devotion's light to degradation's chain. Soldiers flood the sanctum, veils rent like temple banners, the girls dragged into torchlit halls, where altars become beds of shame. Thecla fights, nails raking a centurion's cheek, but the machine is merciless, purity twisted into provision, sacred bodies the toll for a city's slight. No blade falls yet. This is subtler cruelty, the brothels improvised in legionary tents, where 15,000 estimates from scattered papyri become the army's veiled arsenal. The air fills with muffled sobs, the scent of myrrh drowned in sweat and iron. Word spreads like fever through the alleys. By dawn, the purge widens. Thecla's brother among the youth, cut down in the Bruchian, bodies heaped like cordwood, the Nile's mouths staining red. Elders garroted in their villas, their ledgers seized for treasonous tallies. Alexandria fractures, markets shuttered, the Canopic Way, a river of refugees. This wasn't vengeance on jests alone. This was the system asserting scale. Cull the young to starve future revolts, tax the survivors to fund the East. Caracalla's edicts, etched on papyrus rolls, expel rural folk, cordon quarters, revoke spectacles a city halved, its pulse throttled. Thecla, spared the sword but chained in a tense gloom, whispers rights to the dark, her vow a fractured shield. A modern echo surfaces, regimes that weaponize women's bodies, from wartime enclaves to shadowed economies, where sanctity bends to power's whim. But in Alexandria's hush, as smoke curls from desecrated groves, the machine grinds on. The Virgin's fall was no end, it was escalation's spark, and across the delta a witness stirs, his quill poised to etch the fracture. From the emperor's vantage, high in the Serapeum's pylons, the city sprawls like a disobedient map alleys, twisting defiance, harbors teeming with whispers. Caracalla paces the mosaic floors, his Caracalla hood thrown back, revealing a face scarred not by battle, but by mirrors that reflect a brother's ghost. He isn't the butcher of tales, he's the architect, each decree a beam shoring the empire's tilt. They mocked the purple, he tells his prefect, a wiry Syrian named Macrinus, whose ledgers track grain flows and troop morale. Macrinus nods, his rings glinting rewards for tallies that balance terror with tribute. The system hums here, in these chambers. Couriers from Rome report senatorial grumblings, Eastern satraps pledge legions, but Alexandria's jests are the crack. Enlist the youth, Caracalla commands, and let the virgins serve. Macrinus bows, dispatching orders to quartermasters who repurpose temple silks into tent dividers. The machinery spreads like fever, not in chaos, but calibrated waves. First, the cordons. Walls rise from the heptastadion, dividing Greek elites from Egyptian underbelly. Checkpoints manned by auxiliaries, who eye every face for Geta's echo. Incentives flow downward. Centurions promise estates in Gaul for loyal enforcement. Common soldiers double pay for nights in the new relief camps. Reports climb the chain. A major from the 3 Cyrenaica tallies 1,500 secured, his scroll sealed with wax-stamped eagle and cloaked man. Numbers humanize in horror. Not tallies, but empty market stalls where fathers once bartered dates, silent looms where mothers wove for Isis. Whole enclaves in the Rakotis quarter maze of Coptic alleys empty overnight, families vanishing into barges bound for Theban quarries. The virgins, once the city's veiled heart, now thread through this web, shuttled to outlying forts, their chants replaced by soldiers' guttural laughs, their purity the oil-greasing legionary loyalty. Shift the gaze southward, to a spice trader named Heraclides, a Greek from the merchant class who witnesses from the fringes. He isn't elite, nor targeted his stall in the emporium deals in pepper and regret, his ledgers clean of satire. That first week, as purges ripple, he hunkers in his warehouse, the air heavy with cumin and fear. Through a cracked shutter, he sees the machinery in motion, wagons rumbling past, laden not with grain, but girls' veils muddied, eyes hollow as drained canals. Heraclides, 40 seasons weathered, remembers his own Isis vow as a boy, the sistrum's rattle promising floods. Now, it mocks him. He slips notes to kin in Antioch. The emperor builds walls within walls, turns temples to barracks. Incentives bite. A neighbor, tempted by silver, turns in a mime for seditious verse, earning a plot in the Fayum. Heraclides resists, smuggling bread to shadowed doorways, but the system watches informers in every agora, their whispers promotions. A breather comes unbidden, in the quiet of a side chapel to Hathor, where Heraclides pauses amid the purge's roar. Sun filters through acacia leaves, dappling a forgotten altar where a cow-horned statue smiles serenely, oblivious to the chains clinking beyond. He sips brackish water from a clay cup, tasting the irony. Alexandria, city of wonders, reduced to rationed breaths. A stray cat curls at his feet, purring against the distant clamor, a dark contrast. Life's stubborn thread amid the unraveling. But escalation presses. In the Delta's marshes, a secondary wave hits. Villages raided for recruits. Women conscripted to feed the machine's hunger. One moment crystallizes a priestess from a lesser shrine, her arms laden with votive doves, cornered by a patrol. She releases the birds in defiance, feathers whirling like futile prayers, before the net falls. Her fate echoes Thecla's, not death, but diminishment. Her sanctity bartered for troop cohesion. The spread isn't frenzy, it's federation. Prefects in Memphis wire funds for relief provisions, couriers relay tallies to Antioch, disorder quelled, morale elevated. Whole bloodlines, thin artisans who etched ISIS amulets, now hammer legionary tags, their hands collused by chains. Heraclides flees north by spring, his stall torched in reprisal, carrying tales that will seed eastern doubts. The machine, fed by these angles, swells. Virgins disperse to frontier posts, their desecration a silent sacrament binding soldiers to the purple. No unbroken scream, just the system's sigh, efficient, insatiable. But in that efficiency lies the hook. Caracalla's gaze turns east, to Parthia's thrones, blind to the fracture widening beneath. What overreach awaits? The Delta holds its breath. Time slows in the Serapeum's heart, where shadows stretch long as accusations. It's mid-January now, the air crisp with harmattan winds that carry desert dust like accusations unspoken. Caracalla stands on the platform, overlooking the sacred lake where crocodiles once thrashed in divine frenzy, now still, as if sensing the hush. Below, in the Bruchion's cordoned maze, the machine reaches fever pitch. Not scattered strikes, but a symphony of suppression. The emperor's orders, once whispers to Macrinus, now thunder through heralds, root the sedition, body, and vow. 15,000 virgins, no mere estimate, but a chorus quantified in temple rolls seized by scribes, face the climax. Thecla, her once lustrous hair matted with camp grime, kneels in a repurposed naos, the air thick with the musk of unwashed wool and fierce sweat. Her sisters huddle close, 2,000 in this wing alone, their veils shredded into rags that barely shield modesty. Sensory assault builds, the scrape of hobnailed boots on flagstones, the metallic tang of oiled blades, the low moans of those already broken echoes from tents where sanctity shattered like cheap pottery. The peak unfurls in deliberate horror. Centurions, faces scarred from Rhine winters, herd the girls into the hypostyle hall, columns like silent judges towering overhead. Caracalla descends, his presence a chill draft, inspecting ranks as if choosing horses for the cursus publicus. The goddess demands sacrifice, he intones, voice echoing off granite, a lie cloaked in piety. For Isis's rites exalt life, not this profane inversion. Thecla meets his gaze, her onyx eyes unbowed, whispering, "You profane what you cannot possess." A murmur ripples defiance from a lesser priestess, her sistrum raised like a talisman. The emperor's hand twitches. The crack comes swift. A tribune's vine staff lashes out, splintering ivory against flesh, the sound a wet snap that hangs in the vaulted air. Blood beads on linen, warm and coppery, trickling to pool at sandal straps. The girls press closer, breath sinking in terror's rhythm. Inhale the incense's fading sweetness, exhale the encroaching rot. Slow it further, the crucial beat where system meets soul. Thecla feels the rope bite her wrists, coarse hemp from Libyan fields, as she's pulled forward. Around her, the hall transforms. Altars shoved aside for straw pallets, braziers repurposed to heat branding irons not for death, but marking. The virgin's fall isn't blades in moonlight, it's the methodical unmaking. One by one, they yield or break implications blade sharper than steel. Bodies bent to the legion's rhythm, sacred chants twisted into gasps. Thecla resists longest, her nails drawing blood from a guard's arm, earning a backhand that splits her lip, salt blooming on her tongue. Dragged to a shadowed alcove, Where Isis's statue weeps black tears from lamp soot, she endures the machine's core, not gore, but the soul's slow eclipse, purity forged into the empire's hidden fuel. 15,000 threads unraveled, woven into brothels that snake from Delta forts to Antioch's gates, women of the Nile become the oil for Parthian wheels. Yet in this zenith, the crack appears not in victims' cries, but the system's overreach. A soldier, a Thracian veteran, with 20 winters salt in his veins, hesitates at Thekla's plea. We serve the same gods. His blade dips, whispers spread among the ranks, tales of Geta's ghost in the ranks, or Isis's wrath in fevered dreams. Macrinus notes the falter. Desertions tick upward, 24 in a night, their packs heavy with pilfered amulets. Caracalla senses it, his paranoia, a live wire orders double. Execute the waverers, triple the virgin's shifts, but the fracture widens. Thekla, marked but unbroken, slips a shard of pottery to a sympathetic laundress, etched with a plea. Tell the Delta, the goddess remembers. It reaches Heraclides' kin, seeding doubt in eastern garrisons. The climax crests not in triumph, but tremor the machine groans, a gear slipping under its own weight. The aftermath settles like ash after fire, the Serapeum's halls echoing with absence rather than agony. Caracalla departs in March, his legions bloated with recruits and shadowed by ghosts, bound for Antioch's war councils. The emperor's fate, swift and unceremonious, stabbed by a disgruntled officer on a Parthian road in 217, his body left for crows, the purple passing to Macrinus in a coup that reeks of inevitability. No heroic blaze, just the machine's indifferent churn, deifying the tyrant one year, damning him the next. Alexandria limps on, its population halved by some counts, 20,000, youth gone, their blood a delta fertilizer. The virgins? Scattered like lotus seeds, some reclaimed by families in hushed delta hamlets, others lost to frontier outposts, their vows a private scar. Thekla vanishes into legend, perhaps fleeing to Memphis's hidden shrines, her whispers fueling Isis cults that outlast the empire. The city rebuilds in fits, walls crumble under neglect, but markets reopen. Philosophers reconvene in half-ruined stoas, their jests now coded in metaphor. Power shifts like sand dunes. Severus's dynasty fractures Macrinus, a mere equestrian, holds the throne briefly before Elagabalus, Julia Domna's grandnephew, restores Syrian fire in 218. Alexandria's prefects tighten quotas, but the cordons fade, rural folk trickling back to swollen slums. Long-term, the wound festers. Grain flows stutter, fueling Rome's bread riots. Eastern legions, soured by the brothel's taint, eye Parthian gold with less zeal. The Constitutio's citizenship, meant to bind, instead blurs identities. Provincials grumble as taxes bite without right's balm. An ironic twist. Caracalla's Alexander madness, which birthed the Virgin's fall, inspires coins stamped with conquering cloaks. Now, collectors' curios in Byzantine vaults, artifacts meant to exalt, reduced to tavern wagers. The machine, for all its grind, births backlash. Isis's mysteries swell in women's circles, a quiet resistance that mocks imperial altars. The Delta heals, but scars remain, temples rededicated with veils twice dyed, chants laced with unspoken vows. In the hush, the system's lesson lingers. Overreach devours its wielder, leaving echoes in the survivor's gaze. Dust motes dance in the Serapeum's restored light. A century later, when Byzantine masons unearth a cache beneath the sacred lake shards of pottery, etched with hurried pleas, veils frayed but embroidered with Isis's knot. In 1995, off the Pharos' submerged flank, Frank Gaudio's divers surfaced papyri fragments. Trial minutes from Heraclides' era, yellowed rolls naming the 1,500 consigned to service. Their fates tallied like livestock. No grand sarcophagus, but tangible ghost-lead seals stamped with Caracalla's profile, twisted now in corrosion. A Polish team at Komel-Dika, sifting Roman quarters bones in the 1,970 seconds, finds lecture halls scarred by fire, mosaics of Nile nymphs cracked but defiant. These aren't treasures for museums. They're proofs, human scale. A girl's henned palm print on a door jamb, a sistrum bent but unbroken, dredged from harbor silt in 2003 by Gaudio's nets. The discoverer? Jean-Yves Empereur, French archaeologist whose ladders descend into Comeldica's vaults since 1980, unearthing baths where virgins once bathed in ritual purity, now echoing with the absent splash. In 2010, his team dates a villa's fall to 215's tremors, its frescoes of Isis weeping actualized in pigment, tangible, yes, a major's signet ring, engraved with eagle and cloak, lost in the purge's melee, surfacing in a 2022 dredge. These finds humanize the machine, not abstract edicts, but fingerprints on clay. Thekla's shard, perhaps, whispering from anaerobic mud. Modern hands, Gaudio's, Empereur's piece, the puzzle, their dives a dialogue across millennia, revealing not just stones, but the system's blueprint, how one edict's ink desecrated 15,000 lives. Why does this matter, beyond the Delta's ghosts? It mirrors the boardrooms of today, where algorithms target dissent, turning voices sacred in their freedom into data streams for control. Not preachy parallels, but grounded truths. Power's machine thrives on isolation, brokering bodies as currency, from refugee camps to digital shadows. This teaches resistance's quiet forge, not swords, but shards, etched pleas that outlast emperors, proving human nature's bend toward memory over erasure. Caracalla's terror was an anomaly. It was architecture, a warning that sanctity, once weaponized, reshapes us all. Yet, in that reshaping, seeds of defiance bloom Isis's knot, untied but remembered, a universal thread. We endure, not despite the grind, but through its cracks. Return to that shadowed colonnade, jasmine wilted now, the Nile's silt heavier with unspoken grief. The veils are gone, the chants silenced, but the air still hums with what was stolen and reclaimed. The girls who were meant to vanish, their purity a footnote in imperial ledgers, didn't. They persist in the papyri's curl, the mosaic's crack, the diver's gasp at dawn. Heraclides' scrolls, smuggled east, seeded doubts that felled a dynasty. Thekla's whisper, etched in clay, echoes in women's rights that spanned Sahara to Gaul. They were the machine's fuel, but became its undoing proof that even in terror's forge, the human spark refuses the bellows. If this story stirred something in you, the fragility of the sacred, the grind of unchecked power, drop a comment below. What echo of Alexandria do you see in our world today? Your voice keeps these truths alive. And with that, we let the silence fall, the Nile's current carrying us forward.